So we're going to have a bit of a whistle-stop tour this afternoon, think of a few different ways of how to share our faith more confidently. So we're going to mention try praying, something called the 10-second rule, and then we have Andrew with us, who's going to talk to us about some of the courses that we might do for how to tell our faith stories, and then we're going to be thinking about how to give an answer afterwards. And there's going to be the PowerPoint with the resources that we mentioned today are going to be sent out to you afterwards, so don't worry too much about making lots of notes. You'll be able to see the PowerPoint later with the things that we mentioned on there. So the first thing that we're going to think about is try praying, and that's going to be Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. So maybe when you're thinking of sharing your faith, maybe you're a 1 or a 2, well then I'm going to recommend this try praying to you especially, because you don't have to say very much. You can just say, oh, would you like to try praying? And if you've got some of these books handy, you can buy these. The more you buy, the cheaper they are, but they're only about £1 each. If you'd like one, I've got a pile, and I'm happy to bring some. I'm happy to deliver one to you if you can give it a go. But basically, it's for someone who's not a Christian, and it's all designed that way. It's really simple, and inside there are 7 days of pages. So they look a bit like that, quite colourful. And each day they give you things to try with praying, and it also is based on the Bible. So it's got Jesus's sayings and teachings in there, and it's all just designed for anyone on the street to have a go at praying. So I really have a heart for evangelism, but I'm not particularly. I always think I'm not particularly good at it, but it's because I want to do it, so I just keep trying. And so if you're like that, this would be really good. And you could also get your church to back it. So that way you're doing your bit as well, sort of behind the scenes, because you can buy a whole bundle of these. You get like about 100 books, and it comes with a plastic box that you can attach to your railings outside the church. And there's also a banner that comes with it. And I think if you buy that whole bundle, then you've done the job really. You put the books in the box outside, and people can walk past the church and just take one. And we're going to watch a video in a moment, and there's a lady on there who just sees the banner and decides to start praying. So evangelism doesn't have to be sort of face to face. So hopefully that will give you a bit more confidence. So we're just gonna, I don't know about you, but it's hailing at mine. So I was just a bit shocked. Massive hail balls. So we're going to watch the video now and just see some examples of people that have found faith through this initiative. Thanks, Helen.
Okay.
There was a woman who lived in Falkirk, and she was travelling 3 days a week down to Selkirk in the Borders. 2 long bus rides, and she did that to look after her grandchildren so that her daughter could go out to work. Back in Falkirk, she was caring for her mother, who was a stroke victim, and also she was needing new accommodation. So there she is, sitting on a bus, travelling to and from Selkirk and at the end of herself. Suddenly, pulling up opposite her was a bus with "Try Praying" written on the side of it, and she thought to herself, it'll take more than that to make me pray. Her bus then stopped opposite a church with a "Try Praying" banner on it, and she began to think that God was on her case. So she prayed, and it was just a cry for help. And she said, God, I don't know where to start. Things suddenly started happening in her life. She had a phone call the very next day, and things just started to turn around. Here's another story. A person gave a booklet to a friend who had been struggling with his wife's suicide 3 years beforehand. On day 6, he walked to a park bench overlooking a river, and at 7:15 in the morning, he prayed to receive Jesus. He says his life has completely changed. There's a young atheist guy who'd been away, and he'd been to a church and was quite profoundly affected by what he'd seen. He came back to Edinburgh and was pacing the streets. He said he saw Try Praying on a bus, and that was the thing that nudged him into faith. There was a woman who was walking her dog. She was totally preoccupied by the return of her former partner's cancer as she walked her dog. She came across a church which had a Try Praying banner outside, and she said she was stopped in her tracks. She had goosebumps on her arms and started praying every night as a result of that.
Brilliant, thank you. So those are real stories. So it does happen. So I recommend buying some of these books, keeping some in your bag or one in your bag. And if you feel that God is prompting you to give one to someone, then you can, and you can just sort of pass it over. There you go. So maybe you could try that. And also, Inspiring Ipswich has made some postcards with this on, and it's got my email. So this is something that I'd quite like to give out to churches. We've got lots of them. They're thick piles. I've got a box here. So if you could let me know if you'd like some for your church, then I can deliver them. Thank you. So that's St. Margaret. And yeah, you might have to message me. Yeah, that would be great if you could put it in the chat. And then they can be given out in any way that you like. So there you go. I'm going to hand over to Helen now. She's going to talk about the 10-second rule.
Okay.
Helen.
Just going to share my screen again. Okay, so the 10-second rule is a small book, a really easy book to read, with a principle in it, and the principle is called the 10-second rule as well. And I think it's just one approach for people that they might be able to use, and I think actually whether they're confident or not. And the idea of the rule is that you just do the next thing that you're reasonably sure Jesus wants you to do, and to do it within 10 seconds. And the reason the book suggests you do it within 10 seconds is that any longer than that, and you're likely to talk yourself out of doing it. And also talks about the next thing that you're reasonably sure. So you don't have to be absolutely confident that God wants you to do something. You just have to have an inclination, really. And the idea of the rule is that it takes the pressure off us, because God does the prompting, God does the deciding, and we just have to make a decision in advance to try and follow this 10-second rule. And in the book, there are lots of examples about the 10-second rule. Well, how does this help us to share our faith? Well, what happens is you will act on something. I'll give you some examples in a minute, but you take action when you feel that God has prompted you. And then as soon as God has done the prompting, usually somebody will say, well, why have you just done what you've done? And all you need to say is, well, I'm a follower of Jesus and I'm trying to obey the 10-second rule. And then that in itself will raise another question, because most people, and the author says, most people can't leave it there. They want to know what the 10-second rule is, so they're likely to ask. And so in the book, there are several examples of the author having followed this 10-second rule. So one example was that one evening he was really prompted, felt God prompting him to phone a friend. And so he phoned this friend, and the friend was a businessman. And this businessman happened to be away from home in a hotel room, and actually in a really dark place. And the phone call obviously happened to change the course of that businessman's evening, because he'd been prompted to make the phone call. And another example in the book, I've got the book here with lots of stickers in it of ideas of things that I could share with you. Another example was that the author Claire de Graaf felt prompted to buy a meal for a homeless man. And he'd already made a decision about how he was going to do that, and that he was going to follow the 10-second rule. So he took this man into a cafe, I think, to buy him a meal. And when this man was eating, he asked the author why he'd actually wanted to sit and eat in a cafe with him. And so Claire de Graaf said, well, actually, to be totally honest, I didn't want to sit and eat with you. But I'm a follower of Jesus, and I'm just trying to follow the 10-second rule. And he says that almost everyone who hears that wants to know more. And the outcome of that in the end, I think, was that Claire de Graaf shared his contact details with this homeless man. But the man never got back to him, and he never actually found out any more of the man's story. And that's another thing that we need to remember is we're just sort of one fingerprint, one moment in time, one encounter in other people's lives. We don't necessarily know what happens at the end of their story, and we're highly unlikely to be the very last person before this person that we're talking to commits themselves and gives their life over to Christ. And we've just got to trust God that the prompting is the right thing to do, and even if it's not, perhaps it is anyway. But we've just got to trust God, because sometimes the prompting might be for our own purpose, God to teach us something, or sometimes it might be to teach, for the other person, to bless the other person. So another thing that we're going to move on to talk to find out more about is some of the courses that are available that might help us to share our faith. And Andrew's with us, our evangelist advisor. So Andrew, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got a couple of things I'm going to share on the screen in a second, but I think for a lot of us, I feel that this is a real opportune time to share our faith, because following on a little bit from Helen, but people are going to ask us questions. They're going to say, what's kept you going during this time? How have you survived this pandemic? What's kept you smiling? And hopefully our answer to that is going to be God, my church, my faith. So people are going to ask these questions. But if they don't, actually, we can prompt that by asking them questions. And so the first thing I've got here, so this will come around to you. I'm going to share my screen, but this is a CPAS resource. I've been on a number of webinars recently, and there's lots and lots of information out there, but I quite like this one, which is a CPAS resource. And this is the first one, thinking about questions that you can ask. It's what Jesus did, and you'll see that a little bit at the beginning there on that screen, that Jesus was asked 183 questions in the Gospels, to which he gave back 307 questions in reply. So questions are good. But if people aren't going to ask us these questions about how we survived, then we can ask them, which will prompt them to then ask us, or that we can give the response to ourselves. So on this sheet, they give you lots of other ideas as well. But here particularly, they've given you 5 questions that you can ask someone during COVID. So there's your first one there. So what has your experience been of this pandemic? What are you grateful for? Or what have you struggled with? You can ask people that in a conversation, and they can, whatever they respond to that, but you can say, well, do you know, I'm grateful for my faith. I'm really grateful for my church, because I don't know how to survive without that. So we can use that as an opportunity. What do you think you've learned from this experience? They might give you that, but then we can respond, but you know, I've really learned to trust God more. I really have. And so we can create those opportunities to come. And then from there, we can maybe get people to give them a try praying booklet or whatever that may be. So use these opportunities. So use these questions. They're good some. Again, the more direct one, have you found yourself praying during this time? But you don't have to go straight for the jugular in the question. Actually, you can use some of those other ones, which will lead to conversation. And I think what's good about this is actually it's about listening to them as well, and listening to them and thinking what the good news could be for them in their situation. So I'd highly recommend that as a and so that sheet will come around to you. It's 2 sides, and that will come around to you. Also, again, it's a CPAS resource, but as I said, there are various courses. I hate the word course really for these kinds of things, but there are various courses that you can use in your churches to help people to think about sharing their faith. And so here are a few. Again, I don't know all these in depth. Some of you may have used some of these before, I don't know, but I've had a look at some of them. Living and Telling is a good one, but it's really aimed at youth. It's quite fast moving, and the videos are very youth orientated. So it's really for a youth group. So if you've got lots of young people that are really eager and keen to share your faith, this actually is a really good one. It's 10 sessions. It is free, so it's downloadable. It's all free online, but you do have to pay for the journals that go with it, and the journals are £20 for a pack of 10. So you do have to buy those for it. But again, what I've seen of it for young people, it's very good. Story Bearer is also, it says it's for adults as well. Again, I find this quite young person orientated. The guy leading it, he uses it, he talks his story in a bit of like a rap poem type thing. So again, it's quite good for people that want to be quite modern in their thinking as well. That's very good. Again, that is free. It's 5 sessions, so it's shorter. It's only 5 sessions, and you don't download the videos. It takes you to a YouTube link, so you could download from YouTube, I suppose, or if you ran it, you may have to have internet access to do it. Mission Shaped Living is fairly new. Again, it's much more in depth. John McGinley, who has written this, and again, the link will take you to him explaining through the whole session, but it is much more in depth, much more theological. And John McGinley is one of the leaders for the Archbishop's College of Evangelists. So again, he's quite intellectual. So it's very good for maybe a home group or something like that. Again, 8 sessions on that one. And then my favourite 2 are these 2, Faith Pictures and Talking Jesus. Again, Talking Jesus, I know a number of my colleagues have used that. Again, the videos are very good. Has anyone used Talking Jesus? No hands. Okay, so the videos are very good. They're a little similar to the modern alpha videos. If you used alpha, the modern videos with the young couple that seem to be going around the world in various things. So the videos are quite similar to that. They're sort of outside and in a setting, fairly fast moving. They're good. Obviously that's £25 for that one. And then Faith Pictures. I'm going to share stop sharing my screen because I'm going to come back to Faith Pictures again, which is totally free. And Faith Pictures is my favourite out of all of those. I have to say that, partly because it's Church Army. I'm not just saying that, but it is my favourite. And I know quite a few people on the screen here have done that, and a couple of you are in the middle of doing Faith Pictures at the moment. But the idea of Faith Pictures is to give you an everyday image, so an everyday image that you can use when somebody asks you about sharing your faith, that's very personal to you, but actually you can use to then talk about faith. It's what Jesus did. Jesus used everyday images in his parables that people could relate to. So, for example, my faith picture is a dilapidated house. Now, I used to be an estate agent, for which I have repented and have received my absolution. But I was an estate agent for a little while, but then I specialised in auctions. And when you're in an auctioneer, you're looking for different things, and you're looking for the dilapidated house, because you see the dilapidated house and you get excited because you see the potential. And I think if I see that rundown house, but I think if I can get the right builder or developer with that house, that's going to be something amazing. And for me, that's how God sees us. God sees the potential. We might think we're the dilapidated house, but God sees the potential. And God thinks, if I can get hold of Andrew and I'm going to put him in the church and over there, and Andrew could be something really amazing, because God works in our lives, and that's what God does to us. So when somebody says to me, do you believe in God? I say, actually, it's not about whether I believe in God. It's that God believes in me. And that's why I'm a Christian, and that's why I come to go to church, because of that. Now, a picture like that, for me, that nobody's going to be offended by that. Nobody's going to be upset by that. I'm not going to lose any friends or family over that. And often these are the reasons why we sometimes be a bit scared about sharing our faith. We think people are going to be upset, but no one's going to be upset by that. And people could respond by saying, "Oh, that's nice for you, Andrew," and then walk off. That's fine. Or they could say, "Tell me a little bit more." And they might ask me some questions about it. And I don't know all the answers, but I might say, do you know what? There's some good questions. I still struggle with some of those, but that's how I feel that God is with me. But why don't you come to an Alpha course with me, or Start course with me, and let's explore some of these together? Because actually, most people will come to an Alpha or Start if you invite them to go with you, or you're going to go with them and take them rather than just send them. That's another matter. But I think with all of these things, it's actually about recognizing our story and God in us, And I think that's the most powerful thing when it comes to sharing our faith. We have a story to tell, and we have an amazing story to tell. You may not think that your testimony is very exciting, but you know what? God is involved in your life. And if God is involved in your life, that is pretty blooming amazing to me. So we have an amazing, powerful story that God is in our lives. And if we can build the confidence for each of us to share that story, we don't have to, we don't have to know all the answers, but we can share that story across to them, and be confident in our story. Then that's important. And Faith Pictures particularly helps us with that. All of these courses will do that in various ways, but Faith Pictures is a good one to do that. I think I just say if somebody walks into your house and sees a photograph, I shared this in the other group actually, but if somebody walks into your house and sees a photograph and they say, "Oh, I like that photograph," you don't start by saying, "Well, I was born in 1968 and I went to such and such a school," and blah, blah, and tell our life story that leads up to this point. You say what the photograph's about and you say why it's important to you. But when it comes to sharing our faith, we sometimes think we've got to tell this whole story of going around and we get scared. We don't. We can just share some of that story that's important to us in a simple way and then see where God leads it from there. So there's some resources to help you with that. And think about those questions, ask people questions and use that as a way of getting in, as a starting point. So thanks, back to Bob or Helen.
Lovely.
I think we're going to take some questions. I think we're going to take some.
Andrew, can I ask you a question?
I think we.
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Questions at the end, Helen.
You wait at the end. Go on. Sorry.
Okay. No, so fine.
All right, go on.
Okay. So yeah, there will be time for some questions at the end. So when Bob and I started to prepare for this session, we felt that it always comes back to this one verse from 1 Peter 3. So, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. And so the ideas and the resources that we've shared so far, they're all about just being prepared and being ready. And I know for myself, if I know what I'm going to say, I'm going to be a lot more confident. So it's about that kind of preparation and having your ideas already built up, because we're called to be distinctive in our lives, and our lives should be different enough for people to want to ask questions about what we're doing. So these ideas are just different ways of being prepared. And some people like to have something physical as a reminder of the gospel message. So in our answer to talk about Jesus, and you can have lots of things like bracelets see people wear that might raise questions. But one of the ideas that we have come across is, I'll skip over that one, is the 4 points. This is from a website called the4points.com. Some of you may have heard come across this before, but just have in mind those 4 symbols really. So the heart, God loves me, but the cross, but I have sinned, all have sinned, and then the cross of Christ, Jesus died for me, and then a question, I need to decide what am I going to do about it? I need to decide to live for God. So things like this would just be a way of reminding ourselves of the story that there is to tell. And Bob is going to talk us through one that's called the 3 circles. Another idea.
I don't know if you're like me, but I can sometimes think I don't have the right words to explain things like this. So I would always give a book to someone. That's always my default. I've got loads of Christian books and I'm always giving them out once I've read them. But let's pretend you're having a coffee with one of your non-Christian friends and you're sat down and they say, I just want you to explain the gospel message to me. And you have to explain it there. You can't just say, hold on, I'll go home and get a book. You need to explain it there and then. So I'm imagining you're in a coffee shop and there's a napkin there and you've got a pen and you could just draw the gospel message. Maybe if you can't explain it very well. So it starts, you look at the picture there, it starts with a heart. You've got 3 circles. The first circle is the world, and it's God's heart for his design. He loves the world. This is it when he first made it and it was perfect. And then you've got man there running away because there's a cutoff. You see the line on the arrow. So there's a separation between God's creation and him because of sin. So the man running there is sin, running from God. And then you've got the next circle and it's all broken. And you can see the wiggly lines there. Because there's sin in the world creation is broken. People have to turn to something. So that those wiggly lines are substances like drugs and alcohol, or maybe money. One of them could be money, one of them could be relationships, one jobs. And people are turning to those things, but it's not leading anywhere. You can see those lines are just, leaving people in the air. But you can see the lady there who's praying, the stick lady, and she's turning to God. So rather than turn to those other things, you need to turn to God. And we lead to the third circle. We've got Jesus, who's obviously the king. He came down, he repairs the world and fixes the brokenness. And then we've got the last stick man who's radiant there, because they know the hope that God's going to fix the world. And we go back to that original design at the end. So this is called 3 circles. And if you want a better explanation than mine, you could probably Google it. There's loads of YouTube videos of people doing it. And I thought, if you really like this, you could have a go, try and draw it and explain it to somebody in your family or to a friend or something, just as a practice. See if you can remember it. If it's not helpful for you, then maybe try the one that Helen said about the 4 points. Maybe that's better for you. But it's good to have something in mind that if you are on the spot, you can explain it, So hopefully that will help you. So what we're going to do now, if we've finished sharing our ideas, we have 10 minutes left. Helen's just going to talk about the resources, and then we're just going to ask you to reflect on what you've heard. So I'll pass back to Helen.
Okay, so this slide really is just to show you that you will receive the PowerPoint after the seminar. You'll be shared the resources from all of the seminars, and the blue links on the document will take you straight to the website or to a video. So you can see the blue one here, the 3 circles. There's a video there that Bob recommends for watching that. So, and it's got our contact details on there as well. Bob's and Andrew's and myself. So if there's anything more that you want to know from this afternoon, then please do get in touch